Your sweet, sweet lips, your perfect nose, your rosy cheeks, your 10 little toes, your precious little pee-pee, your wondrous size, your tender bottom, your pink chubby thighs.
We've waited so long for you to come. I'm your dad,
And I am your mom,
and we can see it's perfectly true. You're perfectly, perfectly you.
Welcome to BEPE Presents. Birth and Early Parenting Educators is an alliance of professionals interested in and focused on the first period of human development from conception to birth and breastfeeding. This is a dramatically important aspect of human development, perhaps the most important time for human beings in their development. And this is because we've learned recently that the baby in the womb is extraordinarily sensitive and vulnerable and open and communicative as we were never able to know before. And we want to get the message of these new discoveries out to parents so they can benefit from them as soon as possible. This program you're about to see is one in a series of programs that we've prepared for you, which we hope will be very fascinating and illuminates this period of human development.
You're perfectly, perfectly you.
Things that are above and brought down, things that are below and brought up. And as we get together, when we come together, then peace and harmony will be in us.
Anything we can imagine, we can create.
A lot of our deeply embedded beliefs have to do with our beginnings, prenatal and birth, and perhaps even conception and perhaps before.
Any significantly advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And what I'll be talking to you about is a brand new technology. The revolution it will create will be larger than the Copernican revolution, and you'll be here to live in it.
The force, the power of love and altruism brought about the human species.
We are all spirits having a physical experience as we ride the river of life together. And our spiritual parents dressed us in these bio-body suits, these things, put us in this playpen that we call a universe, in order to grow in coherence, in order to develop our gifts of intentionality, and in order to become what we were intended to become, which is co-creators with our spiritual parents.
Treating my birth trauma has literally moved my self-concept in relation to my disability from I can't walk to I wonder what I'm going to discover I can do next.
You're out on the ocean, someplace up near Nova Scotia where they have icebergs, someplace where they have these gorgeous, gorgeous icebergs. And you just can imagine that iceberg just soaring up into the sky and the sunlight glancing off the sides. They're really, really beautiful. And somehow or other you manage to get into a diving ship that goes beneath the level of the water, and it's a beautiful, clear, sunny day. And you keep going down, down, and the further down you go, the more of the iceberg you see. It is huge. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And if you get to the very bottom of the iceberg, it's connected to the ocean, perhaps to the ocean floor. And it's a part of that whole ocean.
Evolution had been really billions of years leading up to this great discovery of an eye through which, and I love Vellum's term, the universe could look at itself. Isn't that a beautiful way to put it?
Now, the angel of forgetfulness comes with the soul to just the point before they're born, and he touches them right here on the upper lip, which is why we have this dent right here. And we forget what's happened, and in we come. We're born.
My working definition of consciousness is that it's a byproduct of spirit entering dense matter.
And as we grow up, I think what happens is we begin to forget because the world does not mirror us back. I mean, the world does not say you have psychic abilities. The world does not mirror back to us this divinity in us.
And it's time, I think, in our world that we reclaimed this knowledge that we have at a soul level of who and what we are.
A lot of the kids come in still connected to the big part of the iceberg underneath the water level.
We don't have to wait for intelligence to arrive in the baby. The baby arrives with the intelligence.
Every level has higher and higher aspects of consciousness. Consciousness in this rug at a very, very deep level. And what our consciousness does is it compels, it works with the consciousness in things.
We're at a point now where the second coming is not some being that's going to be coming in from outside or anything. It's that awareness within each one of us. It's that reawakening of the Christ consciousness, the God consciousness within each one of us that needs to be brought forth and manifested. And I truly believe that there are beings on the other side waiting to come in. But they need the right soil. They need the right environment. They need us to be ready for them.
To develop controlled inner states of consciousness.
And for me, I relate it to just having a level of consciousness to allow that dynamic to not have to run in the shadow of my unconscious.
And by so doing, by this practice, one became more and more inner self-managed in their life. And lots of noise that exists in this world. People seem to love noise more and more, whereas in fact we should be going the other direction. Deeper within to more and more quiet and knowledge and control of self and of the universe.
If we can really look at this through that lens and be aware that there are beings who need to come into this world not right now, at this time, but we're the ones who have to prepare the way.
We build this consciousness and inner self-manage ourselves so that now interacts with the consciousness in various kinds of stuff. Think of a sphere. It has 3 zones. It has an outer zone, which I call the personality self, and it's made from 2 layers of substance. This electric atom molecule layer on the outside, and the layer just inside is this magnetic information wave substance. That's what we take on when we are born, and that's what we shuck off when we leave this reality.
However, my father died when I was 14, and he was taken away from me at that point. I got married at 29, and all this time I couldn't say his name without crying. I couldn't even, but thank God that he sent me a gift. And that gift to me was Antonio. Until from the day that Antonio was born, I felt that I was healed. He came back to me as my father. And we have always been able to communicate really well. He's a storyteller. I'm not a storyteller, but he's a storyteller. And my father was a storyteller. And I can see so many of the traits that my father had. I see them in Antonio.
The evolving structure, I think, is this middle, not the central zone, but the mid-region zone, which is the soul self. And that's made from the emotion domain, the mind domain, and some aspect of the spirit domain. That's the part that is evolving. It has to have a personality self to be a good interface with this playground we're in. It's got to have the sensors. So this playground is a kind of teaching machine for us to learn about developing our gifts. And it communicates to the soul self. And when it terminates, all of that stored information goes to the soul self.
And I have a friend who lives in southern Arizona right now. And she had 4 children. And then for a period of time, about once a month, she'd be in the shower and a blue light had come on in the corner of the shower. And she'd say, "Go away. I've got 4 kids. I don't need anybody now." And the light would go away for a month or so, and then it'd be back again. And finally she said, "Oh, all right." And she got pregnant. And 2 years later, the light came back on again. And she had another baby. These souls knew that they could communicate with her in that way. I would never get a message that way, but she could. The beautiful thing is that our souls know how to communicate with each other. And we do it in different ways.
And then, of course, the core is the source, the high spirit self, or the God self. We are all that. Okay? You have to use this kind of a descriptor because most of our consciousness is in this outer layer and we only perceive 3 dimensions. So we have to make these kinds of drawings. It's not that way in reality. Much, much larger. Universe-wide in dimension. Okay? And that's the scale that we will eventually play on. You know, in the concept of the outbreathing and the inbreathing of the all, you go from a state of total coherence where we are truly, consciously, intimately aware of our oneness to through a decoherence cycle, step by step, going through things that in the past we've called Mu and Lemuria and Atlantis, and then down at the bottom, the coarsest stuff, physical reality. And our experiments and the information going on at the reaches of the outer reaches of the universe suggest we're coming back to this level of reality we left before we were here, which was Atlantis, which means that the level of reality is going to be largely that magnetic information wave level of reality, where connectedness is orders and orders and orders of magnitude more than it presently is.
Never forget, we are nature. We're it.
Well, why do you worship the eagle and all that? It's not that we worship it. It's that we respect those entities of God, and those are the attributes of God.
The Great Spirit is the life that is in all things, all creatures and plants, and even rocks and the minerals. All things, and I mean all things, have their own will, their own way, and their own purpose.
We believe that our stones are full of mana. Mana is spiritual power. We believe that the stones are alive, etc.
I am amazed at the many different forms Spirit can communicate with us if we're listening on so many different levels in so many different ways. So yeah, teaching people to trust their own inner sense and their own knowing, very powerful.
And rejoice in the fact that some women are coming around, taking charge of their life, creating their own internal state of such power that they can walk through anything and not be touched by it. Now this sounds very romantic, but believe me, we're finding this to be the case when these new children come into the world.
We are going to be orders and orders and orders of magnitude more conscious in the millennia to come.
But I clearly felt those electromagnetic fields coming out and embracing me. And Baba had said that the whole universe was there in that each one of us were also equally the center of the entire universe. And he said those fields are fields of, he said, just love. He said creative love as creation. And they're coming out of your heart.
From my place, these concepts and ideas have been working out through me, but only by the gift of the unseen.
I have a beautiful drawing that somebody did. She did 2 drawings, actually. And one drawing is when she came into therapy. And it's a drawing of a house and these big cultural parental figures on the outside, and on the top floor in the attic is a little tiny radiant being in a cage, shut off in the attic. The main floor of the house is, they're like, what are they like? These kind of formless figures. One of them is beating. One of them is looking at a mirror which says, "Be like me." One of them is punishing for guilt. I mean, there are all these tapes, like, or books on the bookshelf. You're supposed to be this way. You're supposed to do that way. All these rules and regulations. And the bottom line is you're no good. And underneath, in the basement, with a vent coming up the basement, it's just like there's a vent, a heating vent. In the basement, there is a little kid with a broken heart and rage and also grief. She has them on pillars, grief and sadness. And this little kid has an old-fashioned kind of a TNT bomb, and is lighting it. And there's smoke coming up from the basement into this room that thinks they have total control. And I think sometimes those smoke signals that come up are signs for us to start seeing where they're coming from, what's wrong. At the end of the work she did with us, she drew another one. And the other one is, I'll do the middle floor first. No, I'll do the basement first. In the basement, there's this kid who's sitting in a chair, in a heart-shaped chair, just kind of hanging out. And on the second floor, there's this person, a grown-up person, at a computer, but the person is leaning down and listening to the kid. And at the top attic shelf, there's this light that shines through all the floors. And to me, it depicts the split that's in us, the first one. And the second one is when you're congruent, or when you're in alignment, or when you have some sense of I'm not at internal war all the time. I believe at that point, and I think the heart math people know they do, that Bill talked about, believe that the heart is the seat of the soul. That to get in touch with your heart and have that light flood your being intellectually and emotionally is where you're most in touch with the soul or the divine, the divinity in you.
Psychology is a really interesting word because what it means literally is the study of, that's the ology part, the soul and the spirit. When did we forget that psychology was the study of the soul?
We're never without it. but we don't know how to talk about soul. In psychology, they decided at the beginning of the 20th century they wanted to be scientific. So guess what they just wrote out of the first textbook that William James wrote about the mind? All the things that are really important, like consciousness, meditation, hypnosis, channeling, mediumship, all the things they didn't want to be known for in psychology. So soul dropped out. But without soul, we can't explain this stuff. It's who we really are. We don't lose our intelligence. We are intelligent.
Where did you lose yourself? Where did you disconnect from your spirit?
All through our lives, when we're born and as we grow, we are assaulted in ways with embarrassment or rejection or abuse or different things. And they don't even have to be very big. Because when we're raw and new and totally innocent, even little assaults are very painful. And when that happens to us, we develop little shields that close up and protect us, so that the next time that happens, it'll more bounce off instead of going deep into our hearts and affect us so badly.
He was being severely beaten in the womb, and then there was darkness for 3 days, and he had the sense that they were locked in a closet. Now, he knew his parents were divorced because of abuse, but he had never talked to his mother about specifics, and so I encouraged him, both for him and myself, to call her, because I'm thinking this was so specific and so detailed that I really wanted to know, was this a metaphor or was it real? He called his mom. He told her about the experience, and needless to say, she wanted to meet me. And she wanted to know what we were up to because she had never told him the extent of the abuse or that his father had locked her in the closet for 3 days while she was pregnant.
I really used to believe something was wrong with my legs. Made sense to me. That's what it looked like to me. In fact, there isn't anything wrong with my legs. My legs are perfect. It's about the connection between my brain and my legs. And I actually learned this before I met Wayne, but I believe it was precursor. When I developed a relationship with my legs and I got it, that they really got shortchanged. My legs have a tremendous amount of energy that pulses through them that has nowhere to go because the system isn't there to support that. And man, when my legs finally got it, that I needed to be grieving for them and not angry at them, I mean, then we were on a roll. Then my legs were ready to go dance.
The foster mother was concerned about how this 3-year-old child was behaving. She would strip at the slightest opportunity. She would get up on a table and start dancing very suggestively. And it was enough to disturb this lady. And guess what she discovered after investigating it? Her mother, birth mother, was a stripper in one of those bars where they dance on tables and reveal themselves. The baby never saw the mother dance because she was given up for adoption before the end of the pregnancy.
Because there is such a shared experience in the womb, that the little one really does think that everything they're experiencing is theirs.
Answer this: where was that baby when her mother was dancing? She was right there doing it with Mama.
Well, the paternal grandmother had come to them at 2 months gestation and said, I have to confess, I think I have a biological disease, and if I'm going to get tested. If I do, then your son's at risk, and I'm really sorry, but he could die or be born handicapped. So, guess what? The parents have to do their own work. So I simply said to them, look, I said, you need to do some work. Take the attention off of him. I think he's going to be fine. don't know, but I'll come back and reevaluate in 6 months, 4 months, actually, I go back in January. But, so the parents immediately, the next week, went and started doing work on their grieving process, confronting the grandmother about what she'd done. I got a phone call about 3 weeks ago, and they were having, 2 weeks after I left, they were having dinner together. And the mom said to the dad, well, honey, I'm really glad we went to see Dr. Emerson, aren't you? And he said, oh, yeah, I really am. And the little boy said, me too. His first 2 words. Me too.
Because the membrane is reading the environment. It has the ability to allow something to come in or to go out of the cell. It reads the environment just like our eyes, ears, nose, mouth, touch, our external senses read our environments. In fact, the same tissue that becomes our brain tissue also becomes our skin.
The human brain came about in evolutionary history and historical times so rapidly that in no way could it be attributed to random mutation and survival of the fittest. Now, of course, that was a red-hot issue right at that point, because we've been having this ridiculous thing going on of the creationists on the one hand thumping their Bible and the Darwinians on the other hand. And of course, they're both equally wrong.
It was all about brain matter. If you didn't have brain matter, you didn't matter. You couldn't be anything without a fully developed brain. And they knew, as well as they could know anything from their studies in anatomy, that the brain of a newborn baby was a poor, pitiful example of the ultimate brain.
Here's hindbrain. It's sensory motor. What do we mean by that? Well, it brings in our sensations of body in the world and is capable of making a motor response to it or a muscular response to it. And that sensory motor brain has one great drive, and that is survival. Survival. Also, it's purely instinctual. It is not capable of what we would call thinking.
There wasn't enough brain around for a couple of years after birth for a baby to know what had happened.
But the emotional brain is a way by which we can stand as a consciousness outside the hindbrain and look at it objectively and make a qualitative evaluation of the signals it's sending us. Wow, I like this. The prefrontal cortex can't really develop in utero, but it makes its whole serious growth, the bulk of it, in the first 9 months after birth.
Is life full of fear, or is life full of love? Are you going to be fear-based or love-based?
Her emotional state and her emotional reciprocal actions with her infant determine then how far the prefrontal cortex can be developed. We should call these the angel lobes, because through this brain translates every higher human virtue we have. Our capacity to love, our capacity to care for our neighbor, to be altruistic, our capacity to really nurture and protect our children as we're designed by nature to do. If a mother feels herself insecure, anxiety-ridden, fearful, and so on, during her pregnancy, she will give birth to an infant with an enlarged hindbrain and a reduced sized forebrain.
There are no thoughts
there are no emotions that the mother has that the baby isn't privy to.
The stage that you have to go through before birth is the stage of connection. And by connection, I mean it in two different ways. Connected to your mother and your father and your family. In other words, once you're conceived, do they want you? Are you connected? Or not? And even connection before conception, which in my belief, there's a spiritual connection that comes in. That there is something that happens, like that time before zero, that it all comes in and it comes into the birth. So if you have a spiritual perspective, there's even a connection before then that can keep on going and come into the baby. And it can go all the way through the pregnancy and out. And then you have a fully alive, connected child to their self and their spirit.
Ovulation is a law of nature, but conception is the law of God.
Every conception of a human being, and I mean this dramatic as it sounds, at every conception of a human being, evolution, nature, whatever you want, God, angels, you can bring them all in, but we're talking about the evolutionary process. Creation works through evolution. It's creation's modus operandi. And at every conception, this great creative force is saying, can we go for the higher intelligences we've worked out, or must we defend ourselves? That question is asked at every conception.
I had one woman who was filled with a lot of self-hate and self-rejection. And in that moment of conception, she couldn't go any farther because she absolutely did not want to be here. Hated the whole experience, didn't buy that she chose. And so we wound up spending several sessions in that one spot.
Now, the fact that the mother's emotional state determines which one of these brains nature invests the most energy and growth in depends on the mother's emotional state. Now, this is big news. When I first read this, I said, if this is true, then every newspaper in the country should be headlining it, should be on all the television, and the entire governmental process should get behind what? Every pregnant woman, with everything we have to make sure she never feels the slightest qualms of any sort, that she's cared for, nurtured, protected, loved, and wanted.
I want to tell you the power of positive imprints, the power of having that connection, the power of being welcomed. And you said they should have a cheering section. That is incredibly powerful. It doesn't disconnect the child from their spirit. It reaffirms their spirit. It gives them a sense of I matter. I am somebody.
Attachment is the tie from the infant to the parent. It has two facets. It's not just about attaching in the way that we think about clinging on to something. It's about connecting. It's also about exploring.
In Africa, there is a tribe. And in this tribe, their tradition is that when a mother conceives a baby, the mother goes out in the bush and she waits until she gets a song for her child. And when she gets the song for her child, she goes back to the village and she teaches everyone the song. So everybody has their song. And as this child is born, the women in the village get together and they sing the baby in with its song. And as the child grows up and leaves or does whatever it does, if the child gets in trouble and goes off the rails, they bring the child back. They don't punish it, they don't talk to it, they don't do anything. They circle it and they sing its song. They remind it where it came from. And as the person does, who's ever in the village who remembers the song, sings them out with their song. Now talk about connection.
This definition says that bonding is a unique relationship between two people that's specific and it endures through time.
And they said skin-to-skin contact, this bonding at birth between mother and infant, opens up in that mother a whole catalog of ancient intelligences, ancient powers, ancient capacities, so that she knows exactly what to do and when to do it, and does it with absolutely no hesitation at all.
I want to show you a few things, about a half a dozen things that are ancient wisdom that can help us cultivate all those positive qualities that we want to cultivate. The bonding that we want with our children, the secure attachment, the highly developed brains, the neocortical functions that help them be kind and empathetic.
If you are a baby who is wanted, who is needed, who is prepared for, who is the treasure of the family, these lucky people get to experience life in the context of love.
We were getting husbands in the delivery room, but this young man was overseas, and his wife wanted him to hear her baby's first cry. So we got a tape recorder, and we sent it over to him. And the letter that his wife got back from him had us all in tears, because he got that tape one night when it was pouring down rain. They'd had a terrible time. This was in Vietnam. He and his buddies were in the room, in a tent, feeling just terrible. But when they heard that baby's first cry, every one of them felt connected with home and felt connected with what was going on. You know, it just took them apart.
A man in New York City who got arrested because he handcuffed himself to his wife so they couldn't separate them for their birth of their baby. Wow. I will never forget that.
This is a partner-assisted birth. We heard about this earlier. Men in the labor rooms, men in the laboring arena. It is wonderful to have a partner supporting the birth of a child. It is exquisite. It looks kind of sexy, doesn't it? Guess what created the baby?
When doctors stepped into the process of doing deliveries, pregnancy and labor became a disease. When we get back to the point where we know that it's not a disease, that it is the most natural, the most beautiful, the most wonderful process in the world, we'll begin to make some progress.
When they're born at home, we don't take the baby off of the mother's body. When the cord is left intact, you can't.
If the child is abandoned at birth, as happened to 97% of American infants throughout the 20th century, thanks to the great medical profession.
Now, they actually believed also that there weren't pain receptors in an infant or in a baby in the womb. You know better. Yeah, but they were sure that the baby couldn't feel pain. The louder the baby screamed, the more the obstetrician smiled and said to the mother, "Your baby has strong lungs, Mrs. Jones."
I'm no lover of doctors. I'm no lover of medical childbirth delivery. And I think until you get birth out of their hands, totally and completely, and put it back in the hands of women, we're going to continue to go downhill.
First would be a natural, unmedicated birth. This little sweetheart, talking about the mom, is 18 years old. She has just given birth to this child beside her bed on her knees. I was there, I took this picture. She labored in a tub of water for quite some time, decided she wanted to get out on the bed, and she said, "This is not working," essentially got down on her knees and delivered that baby. She was absolutely magnificent, and she said, "Please share my pictures and any videotapes. I want women to know they can do this."
Living medicine is life itself. It's the process of living and being involved in life.
Before that, I was having this tug of war thing going on between what I believed about myself. And that was all around having the courage to really get to know my disability. Because the thing is, if we can embrace our challenges and our deficiencies, then we can learn what to do about them. Then it's about thinking outside the box, being willing to ask for help, which Williams helps me with on a continuing basis, because then anything is possible. We do not have to be held back by these things we're challenged with if we can become intimate enough with them to work with them rather than against them.
Do most of us know how to be born? Absolutely. Few people realize the pelvis is a big clue. The pelvis actually is like the top of those old canning jars. It has little grooves that are highly suggestive and hints about which way to turn. There's suctional forces that pull the baby down and guide the baby's head. We all know how to be born. Along the way, there can be a trauma.
Once upon a trauma, go where it is quiet, get where it is still. Touch where primal instinct wills your body to fight or flight. Regardless detail, this dynamic plight has triggered a process eons old, archetypal icon stories to mold and ceaselessly shape your character from then through now. Seeming pretentious, you've forgotten somehow that the blood of your ancestors runs hot through your veins. In you, their ageless legacies remain, of risking it all for primordial fire, rekindles once more now, waking the tiger. To ensure tomorrow's generation survives, feel the adrenaline rush. You are alive. The challenge to crouch within appropriate bounds, to couch your stocking and guttural sounds in pillows for pounding or free-flowing tears, modes to abate our society's fears. Yet, let should not entrap nature's high reverie. Embrace carpe diem. Let your tiger run free.
I paraphrase this work of Clark when, in the bottom there, any scientific data or personal observations that cannot be explained by the prevailing paradigm must be considered as magic, until an expanded paradigm accepts their lawfulness as an important part of nature's manifest expressions.
It is claiming what really is. And as we claim that, it's just like the concept of living medicine. If we claim what really is, then it will transform. It'll be transformed because people know. In their hearts, they know.
Nature's manifesting and expressing all the time, and we are slowly unfolding the understanding of that, the detection of those phenomena, and the way of combining them into a sensible construct, which we call a paradigm. And we start with the simplest, and it becomes richer and richer and richer as the centuries and millennia flow by. Every change in the human physiological state is accompanied by an appropriate change in their mental, emotional state, conscious or unconscious, and conversely, every change in the human mental, emotional state, conscious or unconscious, is accompanied by an appropriate change in their physiological state. And so if you display the physiological parameter and it departs from a healthy regime, the individual interacts with that with their intention to change it to the sweet zone. And what you find, of course, is that the human consciousness changes and the behavior changes and the body function becomes better and better.
That there are seeds of divinity that are wanting to be planted right now, that need to be nurtured, that need to be helped through. And we all need that help. We need each other.
something called upside-down glasses. They were really a kludge with prisms and lenses, and he had this group of subjects put the glasses on. It was very destabilizing. He asked them to persevere and wear these upside-down glasses, because when they put them on, immediately they saw people upside down. That's very destabilizing. They persisted because he asked them to, and within 2 to 3 weeks of wearing the glasses, depending upon the particular individual, suddenly with the glasses on flip, they saw everything right side up. Wow. Yeah, whoa. What's going on? Is it perhaps that the belief system of the people that humans should stand erect at an unconscious level creates a force on the dendrites in the brain so that they grow in such a direction as to create an inversion mirror, so that you see things upside down. Conversely, if they're in that state, okay, where there's the beginning of hard wiring and they take the glasses off, flip, they see everything right side up. And so what one begins to suspect, if this idea is correct, is that although you had the beginning of hard wiring, you could dissolve it at need. And the need is with the glasses off to see people standing right side up. So that's an example that illustrates at an unconscious level how malleable our brains are.
I've gotten very wound up with what's happening in the field of medicine. I have realized that the medicine that I was taught and the medicine that is being practiced is a war machine. We kill bacteria, eradicate AIDS, eliminate diabetes. Our language is against life itself, antibiotics, anticonvulsants, antidepressants, and the one that really gets me is the anti-aging thing.
Where he was working with a bunch of pregnant ladies who were having vomiting and nausea. And he did a standard kind of double-blind experiment. He took a group and divided them in half. He gave an antiemetic to one group and placebo to the other. And he was surprised at how many of the ladies with the placebo were able to get rid of the nausea and vomiting. So he did a second step in the experiment in which he said, ladies, there is this wonderful new placebo that has come out. Antiemetic. I screwed the joke. The antiemetic has come out of the laboratory, and I'd like you to try it. And so they all tried it, and they all got rid of the nausea and vomiting. And the only thing he didn't tell them was, what he gave them was Ipecac. Yeah. Here we have this tremendous, this very strong emetic whose chemical force is huge. But the belief system and intention of the ladies was such as to create its own force, which completely outweighed that strong chemical force.
They referred to the whole universe being found in contracted form as a single point of identity in the center of the heart. The greatest single discovery of late 20th century science would be that the heart is not a pump, but profoundly more than that. And that the great challenge facing the humans after this discovery would be to allow the heart to teach us a new way of thinking The heart has a huge and very powerful hormonal action and produces a whole family of hormones. Hormones which profoundly affect every organ in the body and every aspect of the brain. That between the heart and the emotional brain and the prefrontal cortex and all, there were unmediated neural connections. Those long axons that formed to hook the heart in with the most critical parts of the brain system. And that between the heart and the brain, there was a 24-hour-a-day dialogue.
You would go into your heart and hold a positive intention for healing, for love, for appreciation of an objet d'art, an individual, a poem, music, etc. It would suddenly go from a very noisy, time-varying plot to a sinusoidal plot, very harmonic. What that says is that at an electrophysiological level, we have become coherent as a being. Not only are we powerful in terms of electrophysiology within the body, but you begin to see the precursor of it being outside the body. This is how we unconsciously are converting a placebo into a treatment phenomenon. One of the next steps, of course, is to use these in hospitals, to use these in healings. It isn't that humans can't do all of these things themselves, but more often than not, we need training wheels. You see, we have come into this classroom, this universe, to use our intention, to learn to use it right, which means we must make choices. And we will be given tough choices. But you will only grow by making those choices.
My mother would always give us a bendición, and she would just bless us. And we hope that you go out of here with peace and harmony, and that you bring that love throughout the world so that our children will see a better life and a wonderful, peaceful world without wars.
This kind of conference needs to be done in Brazil, it needs to be done in Mexico, it needs to be done in Tehran, it needs to be done in Afghanistan, it needs to be done around the world, because it's time that this message got out.
We can do this. You can do this in your community.
This is all the ancient wisdom that all of you have been blessed with.
I believe that what you're doing is healing when you invite this light into the womb.
So the answer is yes. And we'll fly to other planets. We'll move off into space. We'll extract energy from the physical vacuum and drive our space vehicles. And hopefully we will take with us a great deal of the wisdom, the ancient wisdom that has been in the cultures of this continent and such. When we came with better physical tools to conquer a long time ago. So we will learn techniques to have more powerful tools, more instruments that will let us do these things, but we will be wiser.
Never waste 1 ounce of your energy fighting evil. Put everything you have into simply doing the good.
Let them know that they can give birth. They know how. That's their destiny or their karma. Their bodies know how. Their babies know how.
What I did for them is that I believed in them. I gave them that space.
You ain't seen nothing yet, baby.
Your sweet, sweet lips, your perfect nose, your rosy cheeks, your 10 little toes, your precious little pee-pee, your wondrous size, your tender bottom, your pink chubby thighs.
We've waited so long for you to come. I'm your dad,
and I am your mom,
and we can see it's perfectly true. You're perfectly, perfectly you.
You've got Daddy's dimple,
You've got Mama's smile. We've been praying for you all this while, and now it's clear we both can see you're perfect as perfect can be. You're perfect.